this world. So that within these ancient tombs and within these ancient artifacts in the landscape, they believed that the otherworld people lived on.
Even with the arrival of Christianity in the 5th century, belief in this mysterious world of the dead survived. Gradually, as paganism disappeared, the tombs became ghostly monuments to every god and goddess, every banished demon and lost soul of Ireland's heathen past. Despite the disapproval of the church, the old superstitions refused to disappear. Right up to the last century, for example, iron tongs were often laid across the tops of cradles. The custom seems bizarre now, but once it made perfect sense. To the Celts, iron was believed to ward off evil spirits, and so many centuries later, the folk memory survived, and iron tongs, like horseshoes, became good luck charms. Strangely, even now, in a time when such beliefs are considered totally irrational, they linger on. And still today, many of those who claim they don't believe wouldn't dare put the old superstitions to the test. These days we are tempted to dismiss fairy legends as tall tales and harmless superstitions. But why then do so many cling to the old ways? Is it just force of habit? Or could it be something more sinister? Fear, perhaps.
So even if people are inclined to say, oh, I don't believe in fairies, they're still very aware of the power of the fairies. And so they function in all kinds of ways. They can directly or indirectly actually govern people's behaviour. And on a more symbolic level, they reflect the fact that there are great environmental and supernatural forces which play upon people's realisations in all kinds of ways that perhaps they don't always account for.
In the past, people's behaviour was governed in more earthly ways too. And certain fairy tales had very little to do with magic. A returned emigrant, for instance, a cheating husband or wife, even a drunken farmer, could always blame their mysterious disappearance on the fairies. They hadn't simply gone missing, they had been lost in a fairy field, or kidnapped by the wee folk. Certainly, the little people provided an all too convenient alibi. Most today say the fairies no longer exist. Christianity, they claim, has long since stamped out all trace of their existence and banished the pagan beliefs which kept them alive. According to some, the last of the fairies died out around 30 years ago. Since then, it is said, there have been so many masses and prayers offered up for the dead that Ireland has been cleansed of all superstition. Christianity, it seems, has finally banished the fairies. And yet, 30 years ago, exactly the same thing was said. And 30 years before that. And 30 years before that. No doubt, 30 years from now, it will be said again. Even the legends, it seems, are elusive. Fairies, you see, are never connected with the present, always with the past. Surprisingly, even the famous Leprechaun is a latecomer to fairy lore. Like the mermaid, this mischievous elf-like figure was only introduced to Ireland during medieval times. Although few will risk bad luck by admitting it, the king of the fairies is little more than a colourful impostor.
Fairies are largely superstition now, but there has to be some basis in fact for them, or it wouldn't have survived for this long. And especially since the church had such an influence on the lives of people back 50, 60, 100 years ago. Why would religious people still do these things in tribute to fairies? They're going against the church's teaching as such. It's possible that the little people do exist. I wouldn't like to test it out by insulting them.
But what of the fairies' most intriguing legend, the elusive crock of gold? It's just a myth, of course. But can we be so sure? During the 19th century, a County Limerick farmer risked a lifetime of bad luck by planting rows of potatoes in a fairy fort on his land. But later, as he tilled the soil, he unearthed a goblet of solid gold, encrusted with jewels. It was the Ardagh chalice, a priceless piece of 9th century church art which had been wisely hidden in the fort to protect it from theft. For 10 centuries, people's belief in the fairies had kept it safe. Since then, things have certainly changed. The original fairy fort is all but destroyed now, but the chalice is displayed in the National Museum of Ireland as the nation's most valuable treasure. Perhaps, as many say, belief in the little folk was never more than just superstition. But superstition or not, the fairies kept Ireland's most priceless treasure safe for 1,000 years. And even today, many people, whether they say they believe or not, are still not willing to defy the little people or go against the old taboos. Because, heaven forbid, they might actually be real. Are you prepared to take that risk?